The top our news here at 6 o'clock, an age-old dream becoming a reality. A local inventor has discovered a way, hear this, to use water to run your car.
Stanley Meyer should have been a household name. Instead, he's a footnote in engineering history, or, as some believe, a casualty in a war against the truth.
In order to accomplish a task or retrofit, we had now to develop under the law of economics the ability to render hydrogen safer than natural gas.
In the early 1990s, Meyer claimed to have done the impossible. Invent a car that ran on water. Not hydrogen fuel cells, not hybrid battery systems, but ordinary everyday water.
A scientist, he isn't even a chemist. In fact, he never graduated from college.
No gas, no oil, no emissions. Just water. His invention, the water fuel cell, was said to split H2O into hydrogen and oxygen using a special resonance frequency. The resulting hydrogen would power an internal combustion engine with oxygen expelled back into the air. It wasn't just a bold idea. Meyer claimed to have built and driven a working prototype. A water-powered dune buggy that reportedly ran over 100 miles per gallon of distilled water. But if that's true, why haven't you heard about it? The official narrative says his invention was debunked, that it violated the laws of physics, that it was nothing more than a scam. In 1996, two investors sued him, accusing him of fraud. The court sided with them.
And so my prayer was in desperation when I asked it in my laboratory, in my office laboratory, to help me. For you see, I have been confronted with high-tech development all my life.
Expert witnesses testified that his fuel cell was just ordinary electrolysis, inefficient and scientifically unimpressive. The court ordered Meyer to repay the investors, effectively burying the project. But here's where things get strange. On March 20th, 1998, Meyer met with two Belgian investors at a restaurant in Grove City, Ohio. As the story goes, he took a sip of cranberry juice, stood up suddenly, clutched his throat, stumbled outside, and collapsed. His brother, Stephen Meyer, was there. Stanley's final words? "They poisoned me." Let that sink in. Within hours, the coroner declared the cause of death as a cerebral aneurysm. No toxins were found in his system. Case closed. Just another tragic death. But to those who knew what was at stake, it was never that simple. Meyer's water car, if it worked, could have destroyed the oil industry. It could have rendered fossil fuels obsolete, collapsed gas prices, and shifted global power away from oil-rich nations. Trillions of dollars in petroleum infrastructure, military contracts, energy monopolies, and corporate lobbying would have become worthless overnight. Imagine the implications. No more oil wars, no more gasoline dependence, no more fossil fuel emissions contributing to climate change. Just clean, decentralized energy powered by water. The automotive industry isn't just a market, it's a machine. A $3.8 trillion global ecosystem built on steel, rubber, lithium, and most of all, gasoline. And it doesn't just rely on oil for fuel. It thrives on a network of manufacturing, refining, shipping, and political lobbying that keeps the engine of commerce humming and, more importantly, keeps alternatives in check. This wasn't just a threat to oil companies. It was a threat to the very infrastructure of global transportation. Consider this. About 60% of crude oil consumed worldwide is used for transportation fuel. Take that out of the equation, and you don't just hit profits. You erase entire supply chains. What happens to ExxonMobil's valuation? What happens to OPEC's influence? What happens to governments whose budgets are tied to fossil fuel taxes? But the rise of big oil and internal combustion efficiency eventually steamrolled electrics into obscurity. Even today, major automakers have been accused of lobbying against fuel efficiency standards, installing the adoption of electric or hydrogen vehicles that could threaten their ICE internal combustion engine cash cows. So what do you think would happen if a man in Ohio unveiled a system that let anyone convert their car to run on water? It wouldn't just be disruptive, it would be heretical. The major automakers, Ford, GM, Chrysler, Toyota, Honda, were not ready for a world where fuel came from your kitchen tap, nor were oil cartels, parts suppliers, or even governments that subsidize fuel-heavy transport. Meyer's invention wasn't just a scientific anomaly. It was a threat to the world as we know it. And if history has taught us anything, it's that the world doesn't take kindly to being threatened, especially by a man with a homemade dune buggy and a jar of tap water. And Meyer wasn't looking to keep it secret. He had already begun discussions with foreign investors to license the technology globally. He was preparing to take it public, to roll out the prototype at scale, to let the world drive on water. But he died before that could happen, suddenly, conveniently. Some believe it was more than convenient. It was coordinated. There are whispers that the US government, specifically agencies like the FBI, or even elements within the Department of Energy, were monitoring Meyer long before his death. His invention, if real, posed not just a financial threat to oil giants, but a geopolitical one to America's energy dominance. Free energy has long been viewed by intelligence communities as a national security risk. Not because it's dangerous, but because it disrupts control. And control is everything. Meyer's home was reportedly broken into. His prototype car, the famous water-powered dune buggy, disappeared shortly after his death. It was eventually found, but not intact. Schematics were missing. Testing equipment had vanished. The invention had been dismantled. Officially, there was no investigation. Unofficially, that depends on who you ask. Still, the science isn't as settled as critics claim. Meyer's patents were granted. The device was shown at public demos. Independent observers, including journalists and academics, testified they saw it working. Even if the precise mechanism wasn't clear, something was happening that mainstream physics couldn't easily explain. The deeper you look, the more sinister it gets. What if Meyer's invention really worked? What if his death wasn't an accident, but an execution? What if the technology to end oil dependency has been invented dozens of times, only to be buried, discredited, or stolen? Would we even know? What we do know is this: Stanley Meyer died suddenly, shortly after claiming he could eliminate the need for gasoline. His final words accused unknown enemies of poisoning him. His invention disappeared, and the world moved on. But not everyone forgot. And maybe that's the real reason we're still talking about Stanley Meyer. Because in a world teetering on environmental collapse and energy wars, the idea that one man, with nothing but a garage and an idea, could have saved us all, that idea is too dangerous to ignore. So was Stanley Meyer a fraud? Or was he a visionary who paid the price for dreaming too big? You decide. But before you do, take a long, hard look at the world we live in. The pollution, the oil companies, the wars over energy, and ask yourself, who really benefits from us believing he was a liar? Because if Meyer was telling the truth, we're not just victims of an energy lie, we're prisoners of it. Subscribe for more forbidden tech, silenced inventors, and stories they don't want you to hear. And if you believe Meyer's car could have changed the world, share this video. The truth doesn't die unless we let it.